Gin Lane was founded by Emmett Shine in 2008 to help tell the stories of emerging creatives through design and technology. Working alongside companies like Harry's, Everlane, and Sweetgreen, he had a pivotal role in leading the direct-to-consumer revolution. To date, Gin Lane has helped create $4 billion in startup value and has led numerous Fortune 500 businesses through today's evolving landscape. Please welcome Emmett Shine.
Hey. All right. I'm Emmett, and I'm going to try to make this work. So, all right. Hello. And on the top left, it says, in French, bonjour, so added that in. I'm Emmett. I helped found Gin Lane in 2008, and I'm a design guy head in a circle, so it's pretty standard UI there. I'm from Long Island, New York. I'll talk on that in a little bit. It's my first time in Montreal. I'm pleasantly embarrassed, I guess, to say that. I mean, I've known the city's amazing, so I promise I'll come back a lot more. I like skateboarding, Rick and Morty, and Curb Your Enthusiasm. I just thought I'd put some fun facts up. So yeah, I'm from Gin Lane, and it's just me today. So on behalf of Gin Lane, we say hi. I think some people are live streaming and probably screenshotting and making fun of me. But we're a digital creative agency. We're in Chinatown. We're just under 40 people. We are a multidisciplinary studio that focuses a lot of our work with startups and then some select larger businesses. So I'm going to do three things. One, I'll just do like a precursory overview of the agency. Then I'll talk a little bit about myself in like a funny way, just to, I guess, lighten it up or whatever. And then third, I'll talk on a concept that I thought could be kind of interesting if I was an audience, what would be nice to talk through. So, okay, this is Gin Lane. These are some of the brands that didn't exist until they came to Gin Lane, and we helped make them exist. You know, there's some notable ones up there, but Harry's is, you know, and the Warby Parker guys have been great to work with. So, you know, and in terms of naming, branding, positioning, design, development, and launch, usually it's like half a year and you have to spin these up. So it's pretty crazy, but we've been fortunate enough to work with some good VCs and good entrepreneurs. These are brands that existed before Gin Lane, but we helped grow them significantly. And you know, Bonobos, Everlane, Warby Parker are three that kind of took Gin Lane in about half decade ago, and we did a lot of stuff and learned under their wing this, you know, different way of approaching brand building. And Sweetgreen's been a partner of ours for about 5 years. So there's some cool brands on there, and done a lot of work. Shake Shack, Reformation, Shinola. So I'll go through some stuff. And then lastly, in the last, you know, if I go back to, I want to say Black Seed is a bagel startup in New York that's from Mile End and The Smile. So it's the historical Jewish bagel making process from Montreal and New York, and they came together so I want to shout that out. They rep Montreal really hard, and I learned a lot about bagel making. So if you're in New York, check out Black Seed Bagels. They're cool. And then, yeah, lastly, these are like big guys. So we do a lot of sprints with them where we'll come in and we'll run like a multidisciplinary team, and we'll focus on, you know, single sign-on usage across different touch points, or, you know, bringing different teams together for a retail strategy. And this is like a newer thing, but it's been pretty fun. So, yeah. Okay, cool. So that's some Gin Lane stuff. Then I just thought I'd show, like, quickly snapshots of some projects. We just launched a new website. It's very simple. There's not a lot on it, but purposely. But I'll just show some pictures of stuff. So Sweetgreen, they're, you know, a salad, fast casual salad startup in America, and we built their online ordering system, all the technology, all the infrastructure, the interface, the design, and they're cool, and, you know, they're really good guys. So here you can see us, like, in the background, the little nodes trying to connect together, and ingredients and stuff just to make like a seamless interface. Sunday Goods is a new one. This is a largest vertically integrated cannabis medical marijuana startup in America out of Arizona. We did naming, branding. We built a delivery service that if you're a validated medical marijuana patient in Arizona for certain zip codes, they'll just bring the cannabis to you. They own their farm. It's like 40 acres or something crazy, Dutch greenhouse style. Very, focused on nature, sustainability. So it's been like a kind of fun project going into an industry less defined. Raiden is like a luggage startup. So there's Away, there's Blue Smart, there's Raiden. There's always these waves for startups. So they're cool and they're fun. And if you like traveling and style, check them out. Smile Direct is a direct-to-consumer Invisalign, basically, competitor, but Invisalign just invested a bunch in them. So it's very like middle of America, doing really well. They're based out in Nashville. So it isn't like, teeth malocclusion, technical stuff. It's just like, be confident, smile, have fun, and it's affordable. So that's been doing really well, and people are excited about that. Harry's is, Harry's and Dollar Shave Club came out at the same time, and they're, again, part of this early wave of these digital direct-to-consumer startups that are just poking at, big entrants and trying to get little pieces of market share. So we helped launch them, and they've been great and still do a lot of work and strategy with them. J.Crew, we didn't launch or anything, but we did a lot of in-store iPad applications, which I'm really proud of and really fun, and synchronizing a bunch of technology and videos, and yeah, it's fun and cool. So Whole Foods, we launched their brand 365. They recently got acquired by Amazon, which is pretty funny. The 365 is basically competing with like Trader Joe's in America. It's like a more accessible store format in terms of pricing. So it's not whole paycheck as much. But we worked really closely with Instacart and a lot of different technologies to build a stack that was really personalized, and you can learn a lot of information and work in store, loyalty and retail. So it's been cool to see what's happening with some of the stuff we built going into the Amazon ecosystem. I only got a few more. So Dia & Co. Is a plus-size women's subscription service. So in the US, plus size is considered size 14 and above, which is like 64% of American adult women that aren't marketed to or served or sold. So these guys built this cool kind of personalized service and are doing amazingly well. They've raised a ton of money. They're super authentic. So yeah, a few more. So Tomorrow is a pretty recent sleep entrant that we worked on. There's, Casper and Tuftonito and all these guys. And, we got approached by Serta, which in a million years I never would have thought I would have worked with. But they gave a proposition, said we can make a better, product. We just want to market it better. We're starting a new business. And so we named it and branded and launched it this summer. So yeah, I mean, they're good and I have discount codes. So if you want a good sleep, let me know. And then GE, we just did a pretty cool site for like the tech heads out there. That's if you go to ge.com/digital volcano, got some FWA and stuff and just put into the WebView. So it's pretty sick. It's just like hardcore front end WebGL, ripping stuff. So it was cool to flex those muscles. And then this is the last startup we just launched called Hims. It's like a men's wellness brand. So they're starting basically like in the world of patents. Patents hit a patent cliff and then they become generic. And so there's this scramble of all these startup groups to use Rogaine, Propecia, and then also Viagra and a few other ones to normalize conversations for men. As you get older, your body breaks down, and men are men, and so they don't want to talk about it. But, there's a lot of stuff you can do or take. So especially if you're younger, a lot of the marketing has been for like 40, 50 stuff where it's like, hey, this is happening now, but a lot of you should do is preventative, so it's a little bit more younger. Cool. So here's some stuff just on our team kind of quickly, silly slides, whatever. Here's people looking all agency. They could work at Gin Lane. They could not. I don't know. But this is Chinatown. There's our neighborhood. This is our lawyer in our office the day we moved in. It just looks like, Walter White, Breaking Bad kind of style. I don't know what he's doing, but I just like that photo. We're right by the best skate park in the city, and there's flowers, so it's pretty, and then there's skateboarding. And then I have a little clip. We have there's some sound. But so we have a patio, so we just commissioned a kid who's an artist muralist to paint a cool piece on it. And it's based on a photo of a wave not too far where I'm from. So I'll talk on some stuff from that soon. So, and don't worry, it doesn't go forever. So there's a surf wave mural. Here's me with some neighborhood kids. We got best bike shop in the city, The Shop, right across the street. If you've seen any of the Go videos with Nigel Sylvester, that's like his home shop. So shout out to those guys. Here's a picture of someone in the office looking cool, and here's what it really looks like, and me on the Friday before here. So just keep it 100. And then I just talk on a little brief history, like on like surf the net and surf stuff, whatever, and all that, and also Gin Lane. So I'm from Southampton on eastern Long Island, and Gin Lane is like a very wealthy, rich road. And so Gin Lane is gonna be 10 years next year. No one thinks it's that old because it isn't, but it is. And when I was freelancing out of college, I just was trying to get people to pay me on time. No one ever paid me, so I decided to say I would work for an agency. I just thought that would make them take it more seriously, and I named it Gin Lane because that's a rich road from my town, so I thought people would know that. No one knows it unless you've been out there. But anyway, I just thought I'd show some funny popular culture stuff. So there's Southampton, and there's New York, and there's Montreal for spatial contextual awareness. And then this is zooming in on the east end of Long Island. There's Southampton, and there's Montauk, and Montauk they call the end, and this is the lighthouse at the end of it. In Montauk, there is a defunct military base that during World War II, they built a campsite, and underground they had all their bunkers to try to sonar detect if German U-boats were coming into New York Harbor after World War II, which ended good for us. They turned it into a Cold War base that would try to figure out what the Russians are working on, and they were working on a lot of mysterious, weird shit was happening there. So when I was a kid in the 80s and 90s growing up there, always into little skater kid trouble and exploring stuff, and our favorite stuff was to read this series of books called the Montauk Projects on time travel and the Philadelphia Project and energy beasts and children going missing in the winter in Montauk. So we used to always go out there, and this is like the mysterious radar at Camp Hero that would still swivel and work sometimes. Here's what Camp Hero looks like. If you get on the ground, it just says everywhere, like, get out, you're not supposed to be here. But then there's like stuff also. So a few years ago, a pilot got word of that there was a pilot going around on Netflix, and it was called Montauk, and people in Montauk were talking about it. And I'll show you something here where you can see basically what they pitched to Netflix. And if you see any similarities, you can see that's the radar, you can see that's the background, and they weren't able to, Montauk didn't let them film it there, and they got pretty pissed and didn't want it called Montauk, so they changed it at the last second and called it Stranger Things. And so just want to give a backdrop on where I'm from, a lot of spooky stuff that goes on. Okay, so back to agency life. I'm pretty bad at technical terms, so I just make up stuff. And one term I made up to try to sound like I know what I'm doing is relationship design. I just thought this could be a fun thing to talk about. There's like UX and service design and this stuff. So one thing I thought could be touchy-feely to talk about is like, how do you build relationships? So some of the formatting got a little messed up, but so I like this quote, business like life is all about how you make people feel. It's that simple and that's hard, and that's from Danny Myers, Shake Shack, and Union Square Hospitality. Setting the Table is a great book. If you're in the service industry, I suggest check it out. So here's, the first Shake Shack is just a hot dog stand in Madison Square Park. And I just put like, how do you design businesses to kind of feel personal, relatable, and human? I think all of us, whether you're an agency or not, you're trying to be creative, you're trying to help people understand stuff, interface with stuff, and make their lives a little bit better, a little bit more useful or easy. So I thought a good thing to talk about was a word I always get tongue-tied on, but anthropomorphism. Basically the attributes of human traits, emotions, or intentions to non-human entities, and we most commonly associate that with like animals. Like that guy looks like my cousin Larry. And it's like a turtle, and it's like I know exactly what you mean. Cousin Larry does walk like that, or Uncle Larry. And Pixar is super notable for how, you'll be crying in the theater and just be like, oh man, like the allergies in here are terrible. But like, it's like a fish story or about a trash can or a car. But they do a really good job to build personas out that have human qualities and are relatable. So that's something that we nerdy try thinking about when we're, working with startups or brands, is how do we make this have personifications that are human-wise relatable? So one thing I talked about with like startups is that like, so we learned is that the process of like building a brand in like half a year is a disaster, but it's kind of cool once you know what you're signing up for. So it's super messy, nothing makes sense, everyone's screaming at everyone, you know, this person's kicking and tripping over that. And I just showed like some of the process for like when we were doing Harry's, which was one of the first like full-fledged big startups we worked on. You know, it's just papers and everything super fast, and it's like everyone is wearing every hat. And then the goal really is to try to like make it feel personality and fun and relatable and kind of quirky. So I'll talk on some stuff from that I think could be like, you know, hopefully a good worth the time that I've up here for you guys listening. So I like this quote also: the service voice has many masters, which shows up to one consumer. So you can focus on all this stuff, but at the end of the day, there's one goddamn customer, in the sense that like who you're speaking to on an individualized level. So you better make sure your teams are working together. So I like to say it's like the interrogation room theory. It's like if a cop pulls you and your coworkers aside and puts them into different cells, you guys gonna be, you know, saying the same thing, or is someone gonna crack? So if you're saying the same stuff and you're aligned, then you can go home and then go get a beer and talk about what you do when you have to get pulled back in. So these are just a few principles that I thought are kind of cool to talk on. The first one is I read this book, Wabi Sabi stuff, like a year or two ago, and I got fixated on it. So pardon some of the nerdiness, but it's pretty cool. So I like this notion of like gently nudging users along a journey, being constantly there, being a guide, but being invisibly there. So I thought that's like a great way to think about when you're, you know, doing strategy, you're designing stuff, is like, how do you, you know, be invisible but kind of there, not like Patrick Swayze from Ghost, but and then I always reference, like, I feel like in my mind I grew up in like 1940s America, which is not true, but like the small general store where, like, you know, you don't have a nickel to buy the lollipop, and the old shopkeeper knows your grandfather from high school and says, don't worry, I'll put on the house account and tell your grandmother I said hi. But that familiarity of that small town kind of notion, I think there's a bigger conversation on that, and more people live in cities, and you leave your town you grew up in, and the cycle kind of perpetuates itself. And then we go into digital where no one knows anything, and it's interfaces that are non-personal. So how do you bring personality and familiarity to products and experiences that you're designing? And another thing I really like is this notion of, another word I'm terrible at, is omotenashi, which is basically like this Japanese notion of hospitality. And a big part of it is anticipation. So their thing they get so psyched on is like, you know, setting stuff that you would have needed, or putting stuff out in anticipation of it, or it's just right. And you're like, oh my God, like, how did you know? And that's when they're psyched. So there's really cool stuff in there to think about. Anticipatory design is something people say, but anticipation of what people may need is a cool concept. And a great way to do that is like empathy. So we did a lot of work with the guys at 11 Madison Park. They just got like #1 restaurant in the world. That stuff is like rankings I don't understand, but it's cool. It's super expensive. But they just did a fast casual called Made Nice that we worked on. Anyway, the point is I was doing a lot of research, and I ended up in like a Reddit thread on like with waiters. I love looking at restaurants and hospitality to think about digital. Like I always say, when you're designing a website, it's like a menu, but there's no waiter. So when I go out to eat, I don't know how to order anything unless there's a waiter. I can't. It'd be like me reading French when I'm reading English. I just don't understand it normal. There's no pictures. Sweetgreen, we try to just do pictures. Now imagine you go to order a restaurant and there's just no waiter at all. That's what using digital is like. It's like, here's something really complicated, figure it out, and no one's gonna help you. So I like this notion they talked about is like, hey, what should I do on Reddit when, like, you know, the kitchen messes up and I'm all like, I don't know what to do. And this is like, hey, what's up? I'm like experienced, like head waiter guy. And the person was like, hey, from a psychological perspective, lower yourself to their level physically, which I thought was really interesting, is like kneeling down like you'd see someone in like a movie do that. And then emotionally make them feel like you're part of their team. And you're gonna go in the kitchen, you're gonna figure this out, versus there's like a line between you, you know, and you're like, I'll check on it. You stay right there. So I think that's an interesting thing to think about in designing stuff. And then there's another Japanese concept quote that I think is pretty cool. In tea ceremony stuff, which they talk a lot about wabi sabi, this notion of first tea, last tea. So if you're drinking your first tea ever, your senses are going to be super open, and you're going to be, oh my God, I got to like really just be like, take it all in. And then last tea, you're like, okay, this is my last tea ever. I better really appreciate it. And if you combine those, that's like being in the moment. So again, if you think about being empathetic and being anticipatory, how do you give people good moments that they can move into it with open senses as well as being appreciative? Another funny thing is like embrace personality. So when we were launching Tomorrow, we were like, yo, why don't we stop focusing on like save $100 for this and blah, 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 like, and focus on like the sleep epidemic in America, basically, that no one gets enough sleep and it really affects you health-wise. It's like smoking a pack of cigarettes. If you get under like 33 to 40% of what you should be getting of sleep, so let's say you should be getting like 8 hours and you sleep 6 hours, you're gonna die earlier than if you did. So people don't talk about that. So we're like, why don't we just reference Mr. Miyagi? He's kind of tough, you know? He's not like your bro that like you're gonna get a beer with, but like he's funny and quirky and kind of wise. So that was like a driving persona for how we thought about communicating for that brand. And I think it's always helpful, again, to have like a muse or an inspiration so that you're personifying the business. So it isn't just like, oh, this is such and such business. It's like, this is such and such business. Like you're introducing like a person. I like this concept also, and I wrote down a card because this guy's done so much stuff. He like designed, this is Raymond Lowy, super cool, look him up, awesome designer, like read about him. But so just to read off one of this stuff, he's like Polymath 101 guy. He like designed the logos for TWA, Shell, Exxon. He designed the Greyhound bus. He designed the Coca-Cola vending machine. He designed the Lucky Strike packaging. He designed the mid-century American refrigerator. He designed the Studebaker car and automobile. He redesigned the American steam locomotive engine. He designed Air Force One's plane wheel stuff. He worked for NASA for 10 years. So it's just crazy. But anyway, he has this concept called most advanced yet accessible. So here's like a funny, simple diagram. It's like when, you know, this wave post like mid-century, you know, and like office furniture is being hit and blah, 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 all this stuff. Like everyone's familiar with the cherry chair, and then there's like this novel version of like a wacky chair. So can you make it still relatable and accessible for people so that they're not kind of like, whoa, this is not the adjacent next, I don't get it. So I think that's another cool thing to think about if you're designing experiences or interfaces or communication stuff is like, don't be too simple, but also don't be too wacky like in the future. Details, you know, you can see here, like as the time changes, the clock changes, just subtlety stuff. The example I always get is that when you go to a restaurant, if like, you're like, okay, I'm just gonna use the bathroom, and you go to wash your hands, and like, there's cool wallpaper, and like the toilet paper's stocked, and there's like a nice scented candle, and there's a photograph on the wall of like, Grandma Louise from Italy or whatever. You're just like, okay, I bet these guys, you know, are thoughtful and care, and I bet the kitchen is like that, and I feel more at ease, you know? So the attention to detail is another element that it like prevents the uncanny valley of like robotic distrust, you know? So that's always hard for like timelines and stuff, but if you can like save time to put little details in, it goes a long way. I really like this. So this is like a guy who did a program with, I think, Wyden Kennedy or something, and Nike, where he ran 50 kilometers around Japan, and he was talking about for the U, he just like collapsed and like couldn't like finish it. But it was like new Nike run, you know, whatever, biometric technology. But I like it as an example of like, yo, there's no more offline. And for better or worse, like there's no online offline. It's all online. And you can read a lot of articles. A good Atlantic article from like midsummer, which is like, mobile technology and social media is destroying a generation. And it's like every index of like quality of life and happiness are just like plummeting because kids are just like, you know, at home on their phones and social media and feel negative and sad and just don't go out and like ride bikes. But at the same, so I put at the end, you don't want to overwhelm people, but at the same time, you don't want to not be present. And that's another thing I think is sometimes brands are like, yo, let's do our online strategy. And then like, what about offline? And it's like, they're all one and the same. So I think that's a cool thing to think about. And then just two more. So this is Sweetgreen, and this is like, I made this page kind of messy because like it is. And basically you go in Sweetgreen and, you know, they still have a lot of like supply demand issues, but essentially you can order in person, use loyalty, use your app, pay the credit card. You can order off a website, off the native application, and their whole goal is to get you as a unique identified customer, so they can build loyalty and rewards and conversation and personalization for you across all your different touch points. So that's another thing is like, I was saying like, if I was like, oh, what's up, you know, Robert, you know, and he'd be like, hello, Emmett, I'm Robert. I'm, you know, a 32-year-old accountant. Like, nice to meet you. I'm like, yo, Rob, like, I've known you 15 years. Why are you saying that? Like, are you an alien? You know? So brands are kind of like that. You know, I remember we were working on this project with J. Crew, and I was like doing research, and I was buying pants at J. Crew and blah, blah, blah. And I kept being like, I just had it for the fucking iPhone, like goddamn AT&T and all these service providers, like you got to speak to our other crew, like we don't roll with those guys. I'm like, you just transferred. Why is this so crazy? Like, and that they use it as an excuse is so fucking frustrating. But like, just acknowledge if you want to build a relationship, you want trust, and like stop acting like you don't know me, like AT&T, Apple, probably CEOs probably listening to this, so. And the last thing I had is just like, it's just fun. So this is stuff for Smile Direct, and it's like, again, you should have seen the stuff that was out there for like, fix your teeth because your teeth are fucked up and your parents couldn't afford braces and you're a loser, and we're like, man, why don't we just make it kind of fun, and it's you as an adult and you're paying money to do it, and you're doing it to be more confident and be happy, not because there's something wrong with you, and so it's like you go to like cool unboxing YouTube videos for like my new Jordans or blah, 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 whatever. There's people doing unboxing videos basically for like, my teeth are not cool, but they're so excited to be a part of it that it like shifts it into a positive. Okay, so in conclusion, I just put like, design relationships for brands that feel personal, humanly relatable, and remind you of people you enjoy. Again, if you're like working at Pixar, you want to think of like, they would say like the upside down triangle is the characteristics of the bad guy. So usually most brands we are working for, they're not trying to be bad. So you're trying to think of people that you like or trust for different situations, and then use that to kind of like, inspire how you go thinking about a holistic series of moments. So yeah, and that's my email. So, all right.